On May 26th, my life changed forever. I was a good athlete. I was consistent on the mats with my performances. I set the records, and I finally got to a spot where I was comfortable where I was at. Until I got the phone call, a phone call that I will never forget. My good friend John had passed away suddenly and without warning due to the countless systems in a society that ultimately failed him. John was the epitome of someone too pure for this world. He was kind, always there for you, and someone who genuinely embodied the meaning of being golden. So when I saw John for the very last time at his coffin, I made one last promise to him. I promised John that I would continue to fight every single day to keep his legacy alive and to remind us that there is an ongoing epidemic and an issue that we have to solve. There is an epidemic that is going on with our athletes today, a crisis, and my goal is to remind us of this today. A crisis that has left hundreds like John dead due to our ignorance and negligence, while thousands like myself and many others continue to suffer in silence. They say to truly know a person, you have to walk a mile in their shoes. So today, I'm going to give you mine. Imagine this. You're an athlete in the gold medal match. This is it, everything you have worked for. There's a national title and championship resting on your shoulders, and it's just out of reach. Your heart's racing, your lungs are screaming, and your coach is whispering the game plan into your ears while you try to keep a stoic face. This is it. And you're fighting hard, and you're trying to win in every single position, but you lose. And it's not just a loss for you or your team, it's a loss for your province, your country, your dream, and everyone that's helped you get there. And suddenly it's all over. And you're slumped over, leading up to the competition area, crying from a pain you can never quite explain. And then it's over. And you're faking the smiles, and you're posing for the pictures on the podium, and you're smiling at every congratulations, but it just feels like someone's twisting that knife in. And suddenly, it's not as hard to fake those smiles anymore. And it's not as hard to think about it because this is normal. And you ignore that medal in your pocket. And you don't even acknowledge it because it's just a dead weight. And so you go back to your hotel room and you open up Instagram like any other athlete and you go to scroll to get that release. And you're scrolling and that's when you see it. Pressure is a privilege. Your mind fills in the rest. You didn't deserve to be there. You didn't deserve that medal. And you most definitely did not deserve to be feeling the things you are feeling right now. And that release that you were searching from, it just reminds you that you should be grateful for this. You should be grateful for this overwhelming pressure inside you, and you shouldn't. You definitely shouldn't reach out. We know that athlete mental health has been an issue, and we've known for a while now. Way before famous Olympians and athletes spoke out about the pregame jitters or the twisties, yet we as a society have continued to ignore it. We know a lot because we've spent a lot of money on research, so much so that we know who's most at risk, down to their gender, sport, and age. And we have spent millions in research spanning from middle school athletes to Olympic champions. Yet, the suicide rate has doubled in the last decade for athletes and is now the second leading cause of death amongst athletes internationally. Which begs us to ask the question, why? Why are our children dying? Why are we burying our teammates? And most importantly, why are we continuing to spend millions of dollars on a problem that has only gotten exponentially and undeniably worse? The National Health Institute has found these great statistics about who's more at risk, and we've chosen to ignore them as a society, whilst the University of Bath did a very interesting study, and it was a 6-year study where they examined athletes, and they found that the things that we praise athletes most for were in fact huge contributors to mental health struggles. They found that the relentless discipline, the grit, pushing through their injuries and always keeping up that strong facade was what contributed to their mental health struggles. So much so that 4 out of 10 athletes that experienced an injury had experienced psychological distress within 12 months of their initial injury. And this wasn't just them feeling nervous or uncomfortable, sad, or in pain. This was significant clinical psychological distress. And they found that out of these athletes, 10% of them would experience a mental health episode within 12 months of their initial injury. And out of that 10%, 18% of these athletes would go on to re-injure themselves within 12 months. And this isn't just a vicious cycle that takes years off of an athlete's athletic career, but it takes years off of their lives. The University of Houston and Greenville did another interesting study where they asked the million-dollar question, why aren't you reaching out to NCAA athletes? And their answers? They felt like the sentiment that they had to be strong, that they had to push through, and that the way that society viewed them was the main barrier. They felt like what they showed to coaches to seem admirable was the main thing preventing them from reaching out. And reaching out is vital in treating this epidemic when 18% of athletes surveyed said that they experienced suicidal ideation. And we know that athletes who are unsuccessful are 20 times more likely to attempt again. The University of Nevada and the CDC have confirmed that when athletes do reach out, it significantly reduces their risk of suicide. Yet, even with all of this research, we have failed to confront this epidemic. Now, you may say research is great and all, but it's not like that here. Not in my province, not in my city, and definitely not in my sport. Well, I used to think that too, until I got the call to go back to Alberta and bury one of my closest friends, someone that was like a brother to me. And within 2 months, I had not only had to help bury him, but I also had to talk down 2 of my own athlete friends that had confided in me that they had plans to end it all. And to further confirm the scope of this issue, I sat down and I talked to athletes and coaches from several provinces and sports, and unfortunately, their stories matched the research. Coaches said that they would very easily notice if an athlete was acting out of the ordinary, or if they suspected they were struggling mentally or physically, but unlike if an athlete was struggling physically, they wouldn't reach out, or they would be apprehensive too. And if an athlete told them that they were okay, many of them said they wouldn't press further. And we know this is an issue because these same athletes that I interviewed said that as young as 13 years old, they were first exposed to eating disorder culture, depression, anxiety, and some of them even suicide. A lot of these athletes said that it had been so ingrained in the culture they grew up in sport, that they didn't realize this wasn't normal until a friend's parents or family members pointed out that it wasn't normal to have to wear a garbage bag to work off a bag of chips, or a silver medalist at an international or national level competition having a mental breakdown wasn't normal. And many of them said that even when they realized that this might not be normal, they didn't think something had to change until they experienced either a loss of their own, a teammate getting medicated, or having a significant psychological break or episode. Yet even with all of this, the coaches and athletes said that they felt like we were just checking off the boxes. That we were just saying we did the mental health workshops and seminars and we shared the social media posts so that we could say that we were doing something to tick off the boxes, but that we were doing little for actual concrete change within our sport culture. The very things that we praise athletes for are damaging their mental health. And we see this on social media. And it is taking away a literal lifeline for them to reach out and to ask for help. Social media is necessary for athletes. We can't just turn it off or block it because it provides opportunities to help attract sponsors, to help pay the large cost of being an athlete, and opportunities to connect, garner opportunities, find colleges, all while putting yourself in a very vulnerable position that others don't. A vulnerable position where someone has 24/7 access to commentate, criticize, and ridicule your life. And we like to pretend that it only happens to famous athletes or Olympians. After all, they're the ones that have spoken publicly about filtering out messages, deleting messages, all from wild things, from critiquing their performances to body image to just simply their existence. But it doesn't. The night before a championship, I received this gem of a message. It reads, "You are disgusting. Nobody cares about you or who you are." It happens to everyone. Now, you might say, well, if social media is this necessary evil that athletes do need to keep being athletes, but is also harming them, then what is the solution? The solution is to change the narrative. Change the narrative from toughing it out to reaching out. Get rid of pressure as privilege and remind athletes that they deserve to be here. They earned every opportunity. Do not place their medals or their achievements and trophies on pedestals. They are human, and we must remind them that they are human and not machines. Because your one comment of asking an athlete how they're really doing and reminding them who they really are behind all the medals and the practices could just save a life. I cannot go back in time and save John, but I can promise him that I will continue to fight every single day for him and for future athletes so that another family never has to go through this devastating loss and another community never has to relearn how to function again. So, as you return from walking in my shoes, I ask you to make one last promise, a promise of your own, a promise to the 38 Canadian athletes under the age of 18 that will statistically take their own lives this year. I ask you to promise them that you will try and be the difference. Thank you.